I want to start today by asking you a question about what I'd call a massive historical blind spot.
Oh, I love these.
Right. So if I were to ask you to name the four great superpowers of the 3rd century world, who immediately comes to mind?
Well, I mean, most people taking a guess are probably going to get 3 out of the 4 pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You've got Rome, obviously.
Yeah.
You've got Persia, and of course, you've got China.
Exactly. But who is the fourth?
Mhm.
Because back in the 3rd century, there was this famous religious prophet named Mani, and he explicitly listed the 4 great empires of the world at that time.
Right.
And he wrote down Rome, Persia, China, and this is the crazy part, a totally forgotten African titan, the Kingdom of Axum.
It is genuinely staggering, like how completely this civilization has just slipped from our mainstream historical consciousness.
It really is.
I mean, we are talking about an empire that minted its own gold, constructed these massive stone skyscrapers that stood over 30 meters tall.
Which is insane.
Right. And they launched massive armadas across the Red Sea and even sheltered the very earliest followers of Islam.
And then, despite all of that immense power and influence, they just, practically vanished into the mists of history.
Pretty much, yeah.
So today we are taking a deep dive into the sources to extract the real human biography of this forgotten titan. We want to figure out how a kingdom essentially builds the ancient equivalent of, like, Dubai, completely dominates global trade, and then somehow suffers such a terrifying ecological collapse that they practically disappear from the history books.
Yeah, and we are definitely skipping the dry encyclopedia tone for this.
Oh, absolutely.
We really want to humanize the people who lived and traded and fought in this ancient superpower.
So welcome to this deep dive into the source material. Pull up a chair, get comfortable. Okay, let's unpack this. How does a modest regional center in the Horn of Africa just transform into a global economic juggernaut?
Well, it all begins with the ultimate geographic jackpot. To picture exactly where Axum was, if you look at a modern map, just draw a massive circle over Eritrea, northern Ethiopia, Djibouti, Sudan.
That's a huge area.
It is. And then stretch it across the water into Yemen and Saudi Arabia. That entire region was their sphere of influence.
Wow.
But the true key to their rapid rise wasn't just, the land they held. It was actually the wind.
Oh, you're talking about the monsoon winds, right?
Precisely. So around the 1st century AD, there was this massive revolution in how global trade operated.
Right, because before that, it was a nightmare.
Exactly. Before this, if you were a Roman merchant trying to get luxury goods from India, you were stuck dealing with this grueling, incredibly slow overland route.
Which was dangerous, too.
Very dangerous. Or, alternatively, you're nervously hugging the coastline in these small ships, just hoping you don't wreck.
Yeah.
But then, sailors finally figured out the mechanics of the monsoon winds. They realized they could ride these massive, predictable, seasonal wind currents to just sail straight down the Red Sea, cut directly across the open Arabian Sea, and land safely in southern India.
So it completely bypassed the old, dangerous overland routes.
Entirely.
It's like they woke up one day and realized they owned the absolute only gas station on a newly built, multi-billion-dollar interstate highway between Rome and India.
That is exactly the perfect way to look at it. I mean, their main port city, Adulis, was situated perfectly at this geographic choke point.
Right.
Any ship moving between the Mediterranean world and the Indian Ocean basically had no choice but to stop there.
And Axum didn't just passively watch these ships go by.
Oh, not at all. They actively monopolized this new Indian Ocean trade.
So, okay, if I'm a Roman merchant sailing down the Red Sea on this new monsoon highway, what exactly am I buying from Axum that I just can't get anywhere else?
Well, you are mostly looking for high-value raw materials. The sources list an incredible array of exports that Axum completely controlled. You've got unique agricultural products, tortoise shells.
Wait, tortoise shells?
Yeah, highly prized for decoration. But they also had rhinoceros horn and just massive, massive amounts of ivory.
Oh, right. Because ivory was essentially the plastic of the ancient world.
Exactly. It was highly workable, totally durable, and just wildly in demand for Roman luxury goods.
So they cornered the market on the ancient equivalent of plastic.
Pretty much. And then there was salt, which you have to remember was a totally vital commodity for preserving food and treating wounds back then.
Oh, sure.
So by controlling the flow of these specific, highly desired African goods, Axum essentially held the Roman economy by the purse strings.
Man, the wealth flowing into this kingdom must have been astronomical.
It was unprecedented. But what's really fascinating here is why this sudden influx of wealth matters on a purely human level.
What do you mean?
Well, trade didn't just bring money into the kingdom. It fundamentally altered their entire society by bringing in this crazy level of cosmopolitan diversity.
Oh, because of all the foreign merchants.
Yes, Axum became this vibrant international melting pot. You suddenly had a very sizable Greek population living and working there permanently.
Wait, Greek? Right?
Yeah. In fact, Greek became the language of international diplomacy and court life, existing right alongside their local language, which was Gez.
That is so cool. And you can actually see this dual identity perfectly preserved on their money, right?
You really can.
Because this influx of global wealth directly funded an architectural and cultural golden age in the 3rd and 4th centuries.
Yeah.
I mean, they started turning trade money into lasting monuments of power.
Exactly.
They were one of the very first African polities to issue their own coinage in gold, silver, and bronze. And these coins actually had writing in both Greek and Ge'ez.
Which is a huge deal. Issuing your own gold coins in the ancient world was a massive, undeniable flex of sovereignty.
Right, because it's hard to do.
It's an incredibly complex metallurgical process. Doing it successfully was Axum's way of declaring to all their neighbors, we are absolute equals with Rome.
We have the gold, we have the tech.
Exactly.
But, I mean, the coins were incredibly small potatoes compared to what they were building out of actual stone.
Totally.
If you traveled to their capital city, which was also named Axum, you would see these towering, massive obelisks known as stelae, erected right in the royal cemeteries.
They're just breathtaking. And to truly understand the scale of what they achieved there, you have to look at the materials they were using.
Right.
These weren't built from, soft sandstone or limestone. They were carved out of a very specific, incredibly fine-grained granite called nepheline syenite.
Wait, hang on. I've seen pictures of these. The largest one, if it hadn't fractured and fallen over during construction, it would have been 33 meters high.
Yep.
That's essentially a 10-story building made of one single rock. How are they even moving something that heavy made out of dense granite without any modern machinery?
Right. It requires a level of labor organization and engineering that absolutely rivals the Egyptian pyramids.
Wow.
Nepheline syenite is notoriously difficult to quarry because it's just so incredibly dense and unforgiving.
So you make one mistake and the whole thing shatters.
Exactly. Moving a single block of that size from the quarry all the way to the capital city meant coordinating thousands of workers, utilizing these massive wooden rollers, and understanding deep, complex structural engineering.
Because they had to stand them up.
Yes, they had to perfectly balance these 10-story stones using massive underground counterweights just to keep them standing upright in the dirt.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting to me, because of how they carved them.
Right, the design.
Yeah. They didn't just polish the stone into a smooth pillar like an Egyptian obelisk.
Ugh.
They went to the enormous trouble of carving these massive blocks, carve intricate fake doors at the bottom, complete with little fake locks. They carved rows and rows of fake windows moving all the way up the stone.
Yep.
They even carved the ends of wooden beams jutting out into the rock. Like, why go to all the trouble to carve a single block of stone into a massive fake apartment building?
Well, it absolutely was a form of psychological warfare and intimidation.
Really? Just to mess with people?
Think about it. Imagine you are a foreign trader arriving in the capital for the very first time.
Okay.
You walk in and you see a 10-story single stone monument that looks exactly like a royal palace, just towering over you.
Right.
You immediately understand the unimaginable wealth and the fiercely disciplined labor force this kingdom commands. I mean, you aren't going to try to shortchange these people on a trade deal.
Huh. So it's the ancient equivalent of building the tallest skyscraper in your city just to prove you can.
Precisely. Just a pure display of wealth. And this unique design language actually bled into their functional buildings, too.
Oh, like the actual palaces.
Yeah. Their elite palaces featured what archaeologists call monkey heads.
Monkey heads.
Yeah, that's the term. They were these square wooden corner extrusions designed to stabilize the stone walls against shifting ground.
Oh, that makes sense.
And they had these elaborate water spouts shaped like roaring lion heads. It was just a highly distinct, highly developed architectural style that just screamed power.
So they have all this trade wealth, and they've built these massive stone monuments to prove their power. But to truly compete with Rome and Byzantium on the global stage, stone wasn't enough, right?
No, it wasn't.
Moving into the 4th through 6th centuries, we see them building monuments of ideology.
Yes, the ideological pivot.
They undergo this massive kingdom-wide shift that ends up dragging them into international proxy wars.
This is a crucial turning point. Around 324 AD, the king of Axum, a man named Ezana, was converted to Christianity by his teacher, a Syrian Christian named Frumentius.
And this wasn't just a quiet, personal, spiritual awakening for the king, right? This was a geopolitical earthquake.
Absolutely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, converting to Christianity in the 4th century linked Axum politically, economically, and culturally to the Byzantine Empire.
Because Byzantium was the big Christian player.
Exactly. Byzantium saw itself as the ultimate protector of Christendom. So by adopting the same faith, Axum firmly aligned itself with the other major superpower of the era.
And King Ezana immediately used the ultimate propaganda tool of the ancient world to announce this alliance: his coins.
Oh, the coin rebrand is fascinating.
He physically ordered the mints to replace the old polytheistic symbols, which I think were a crescent and a disc.
Yes, the crescent and disc of the old gods.
Right, he replaced those with the Christian cross. So every single time someone in the market bought a loaf of bread or a tortoiseshell, they were holding a tiny metal billboard announcing Axum's new, powerful religious alignment.
It was brilliant marketing, and that ideological alliance eventually led to direct military conflict.
Right.
If we jump forward to 525 AD, Axum is at its absolute peak under King Caleb. The empire now spans an estimated 2.5 million square kilometers.
Which is just massive.
Huge. But across the Red Sea, in what is now Yemen, a Jewish Himyarite king named Du-Nuwas begins this brutal campaign of persecution against the local Christian population.
Okay, so how does a kingdom in Africa end up invading Yemen on behalf of the Byzantine emperor?
Well, it really comes down to logistics and proximity.
Okay.
The Byzantine emperor, Justin I, he wants to intervene to stop the persecution of Christians, but he doesn't have the fleet or the direct access in the Red Sea to do it effectively.
Because it's too far away for him.
Right. So he reaches out to King Caleb. He essentially says, look, you are the local Christian superpower. You have the ships, you have the geographic position, and we have the shared faith. You need to handle this.
And Caleb actually listens. He launches a massive amphibious invasion across the Red Sea, deposes Du-Nuwas, and annexes Yemen right into the Aksumite Empire.
He did.
So Axum literally becomes the moral and military proxy enforcer of late antiquity.
They were projecting power across oceans. But what makes Axum so fascinating is that their foreign policy wasn't purely about military domination or just being religious zealots for one side.
Right, there's a really surprising twist later.
Yeah, decades later. In 615 AD, they demonstrate this incredibly nuanced religious diplomacy.
You're talking about the First Hijra. Because back in Mecca, the very first followers of the Prophet Muhammad are facing severe, life-threatening persecution.
Yes, they are completely desperate for a safe haven. And where do they choose to flee? They cross the Red Sea and seek asylum with the Christian king of Axum, Ashama ibn Abjar.
And the leaders back in Mecca weren't happy about that.
Not at all. They actually send envoys to the Axumite court bearing gifts and demanding that these religious refugees be extradited and sent back to face punishment.
But the Axumite king doesn't just hand them over to appease a neighboring power. He brings the refugees into his court, listens to them explain their beliefs, grants them asylum, and outright refuses the Meccan envoys.
It's an incredible moment. This action shows a highly sophisticated, deeply confident geopolitical strategy.
Yeah.
They are successfully juggling military alliances with Byzantium, enforcing their political will in Yemen, while simultaneously sheltering the early followers of Islam. I mean, they are acting as a secure, globally minded superpower that totally dictates its own terms.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this makes the next part of the story so incredibly tragic.
It really is.
How does an empire that spans millions of square kilometers, controls global trade choke points, and wins complex cross-sea wars just fade away?
It's the question that haunts every great civilization, right? And in Axum's case, it wasn't one explosive event.
There was no single massive invasion.
No. There wasn't a single catastrophic battle where the king fell and the empire burned in a day. It was a slow, agonizing domino effect of environmental and economic failure.
Starting with the economy. Going into the 7th and 8th centuries, the geopolitical map of the world radically changes. The Islamic expansion, under the Rashidun Caliphate, surges out of the Arabian Peninsula.
Now, you might think, because of the history of the First Hijra and the asylum granted to early Muslims, that Axum would have thrived in this new era.
Right, because they helped them out early on.
Exactly. And initially, relations were quite peaceful, but the threat wasn't about religious animosity at all. It was about global geography.
Okay.
The rapid expansion of the caliphate completely upended the old trade network. Arab forces seized the eastern Roman provinces, including Egypt and the Levant.
Oh, so the Byzantine merchants who were buying all of Axum's ivory and salt suddenly couldn't get their ships down the Red Sea anymore.
Exactly. The Mediterranean markets were completely cut off. Axum's geographic jackpot suddenly became a geographic cage. The Red Sea trade, which was the absolute lifeblood of their economy, simply dried up.
The money just stopped flowing. And you can see this abruptly in the archaeological record, right? Because by the early 8th century, Axum completely stopped minting coins.
Yes.
And a society doesn't just stop producing money unless the entire economic system has collapsed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this raises an important question. What happens to a trade empire when the trade disappears?
They can't pay their armies.
Right. Military pressure immediately starts squeezing them from all sides because they can no longer afford to project power. The Sassanid Persians pushed them entirely out of Yemen.
Wow.
And meanwhile, in the north, Beja nomads, specifically a tribe known as the Zanafaj, begin overrunning their northern frontiers.
I've read that these nomads severed the capital city of Axum from its crucial port of Adulis. Did they physically destroy the infrastructure, or how did they cut off a massive city like that?
It was more a matter of guerrilla tactics and attrition.
Okay.
The nomads didn't need to physically dismantle the stone roads. They just needed to make the routes too terrifying and costly for a merchant caravan to travel.
Just constant ambushes.
Exactly. Through constant raiding and seizing control of key mountain passes, the Zanafaj made it practically impossible for goods to move from the coast to the inland capital. Adulis was eventually abandoned, and Axum was completely isolated.
So they're broke, their trade partners are gone, and their ports are blocked. But then comes the ultimate betrayal. The land itself.
The climate crisis. This is perhaps the most fascinating and terrifying part of the entire collapse.
Yeah.
For centuries, a favorable climatic shift had provided Axum with extended, highly reliable spring rains. This consistent weather allowed them to develop an incredibly complex agricultural system.
To feed all those people.
Right. We are talking about massive stone terracing carved into the hillsides, complex dams, and vast irrigation networks. The system was so productive it supported a massive, booming population.
And weather patterns are never permanent.
Yeah.
And the climate shifted again.
It did. The extended spring rains simply dropped off. And because they had built this sprawling empire based on the assumption of endless rain, they suddenly had a massive population demanding food from land that just couldn't provide it anymore.
Oh, man.
In their desperation to feed everyone, they over-farmed the terraced hillsides, they stripped the land of its nutrients and vegetation.
Which ruins the soil?
Yes. This led to massive, catastrophic soil erosion beginning around 650 AD.
And by 700 AD, it had reached absolute crisis levels. The land was practically washing away beneath their feet. The historical sources mention the Coptic patriarchs of Alexandria at the time writing letters about Ethiopia's desperate condition.
They did.
They blamed the devastating famine on, quote, war, plague, and inadequate rains.
So what does this all mean for you and me? It raises this chilling thought. Did Axum essentially eat itself?
Honestly, it is a textbook example of ecological overshoot.
Yeah.
They built a monumental empire on intense, hyper-optimized agriculture. But when the climate shifted, their own massive population and the overexploited land basically accelerated their downfall. The very systems that made them a superpower became fatal liabilities when the environment changed.
So they are completely trapped. They're forced to abandon their legendary capital, this magnificent city of giant stone stelae and palaces, and retreat inland to the more fertile highlands.
They try to establish a new city called Kubar, but they're weakened, they're hungry, their economy is shattered, and they're left completely vulnerable to a final mythic death blow.
Which finally arrives in the 10th century. Local Ethiopian history speaks of a fierce, conquering queen known as Gudit, or sometimes referred to as Yodit or Esato.
The warrior queen.
Yes. The legend claims that around 960 AD, she swept out of the surrounding regions, conquered what was left of the Axumite state, burned their ancient churches to the ground, destroyed their literature, and drove the remaining royal population even further south.
Now, I know her exact origins are highly disputed by modern scholars. Some older accounts claim she was a Jewish queen seeking revenge for past conquests, but that specific detail has largely been rejected by historians today, right?
It has been, yeah. The religious revenge angle is mostly considered a later addition to the myth.
But the core of the story, a devastating final invasion that breaks the kingdom, that seems to hold water, right?
It does. We actually have independent corroboration for this.
Oh, really? From who?
Arab writers from around 980 AD actually confirmed that a queen from the south had been aggressively ruling the area and had successfully killed the Axumite king.
Wow.
So while the exact personal details of Queen Gudit might be wrapped up in centuries of myth, the final political collapse of the Axumite state at the hands of an invader was a very real historical event.
But, and this is a really big but, the legacy didn't die.
No, it didn't.
The state collapsed, the kings fell, but the culture survived.
That's a vital distinction to make. The political entity of Axum completely fell apart, yes, but its cultural DNA became the absolute bedrock of modern Ethiopian and Eritrean culture.
Yeah.
The subsequent Zagwe dynasty, who took power later and claimed direct descent from the last Axumite emperor, Dilnaud, they continued that incredible architectural legacy.
Right. If you look at the world-famous spectacular rock-hewn churches of Lalibela.
Exactly. That is direct, undeniable Axumite influence living on.
And it's not just the buildings that survived the collapse.
No, not at all. It's woven into the daily lives of the people. It's their gaze script, which somehow survived the burning of the libraries and is still used in liturgy today.
That's amazing.
It's their unique, enduring branch of Orthodox Christianity. It's even the very agricultural practices that sustain them for centuries, like growing indigenous crops such as teff and sorghum.
So the empire as a political superpower vanished, but the people, their faith, and their foundational knowledge endured.
Perfectly said.
It's just an incredible journey. We started with a coastal trade monopoly, exploiting the mechanics of the monsoon winds, watched them rise into a towering empire of 10-story stone palaces and sovereign gold coins, and then witnessed a tragic collapse brought on by shifting global powers, terrifying soil erosion, and a changing climate.
It's a lot to take in.
It really reinforces the idea that the center of the world is always shifting. A civilization can be named alongside Rome and China, control the flow of global luxury goods, and still fall victim to total historical amnesia.
It absolutely does. The sheer scale of what they built and how quickly the earth and the changing trade winds reclaimed it is just a profound reminder of the fragility of even the greatest superpowers.
It makes you wonder what future historians will forget about us, you know?
Oh, definitely.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final tantalizing mystery derived from our sources.
I know where this is going.
We spent a lot of time talking about Axum adopting Christianity, aligning with Byzantium, and building these massive, enduring churches. Well, according to long-held Ethiopian tradition, Axum is the alleged home of the ultimate biblical relic, the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes. Tradition dictates that the Ark was brought to Axum for safekeeping centuries ago and was placed deep inside the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion, right in the heart of the ancient, ruined capital.
So I want you to ponder this. We started today by talking about massive historical blind spots and things the world simply forgot. What if one of the greatest lost artifacts in human history, an object that explorers and empires have searched the globe for, has just been sitting quietly, carefully guarded, in the ruins of this forgotten African empire the entire time?
It's an amazing thought.
It really makes you realize that sometimes the most profound secrets aren't actually hidden. We've just completely forgotten where to look. Thank you for joining us at the table today, and keep questioning the history you think you know.